My younger sister got a luxury car for her birthday, but when I opened my gift, it was a stack of unpaid bills with my name. The balloons floated lazily against our living room ceiling, catching the afternoon light that streamed through the bay windows. Pink, silver, and gold, my sister Bella's favorite colors. The marble countertops of our kitchen disappeared beneath platters of finger foods, a 3-tier cake, and enough champagne to intoxicate everyone in our suburban neighborhood. I stood in the corner, nursing a glass of cheap white wine, watching my parents fuss over the decorations one last time. Today was Bella's 21st birthday, and nothing could be less than perfect. Nothing ever was when it came to her. "Emma, could you please put some effort into your appearance?" My mother's voice cut through my thoughts as she approached, her diamond earrings catching the light. "This is an important day for your sister." I glanced down at my simple blue dress, the nicest thing I owned after paying my own college tuition, rent, and helping my grandparents with their medical bills. Meanwhile, Bella had never worked a day in her life. "I think I look fine, Mom," I replied, forcing a smile. At 25, I'd grown accustomed to being the afterthought in my family's narrative. The doorbell rang, and soon our house filled with relatives, family friends, and Bella's entourage from college. I played my part, the dutiful older sister, helping serve drinks, taking photos, and maintaining conversations with distant relatives who always asked why I wasn't successful like my sister, yet. No one seemed to remember that I had graduated with honors, secured a decent job, and was supporting myself entirely, while Bella was still on her 5th year of an undergraduate degree with no clear direction. The celebration reached its crescendo when my father clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. His face was flushed with pride, or perhaps it was the expensive scotch he'd been drinking. "Today," he announced, his voice carrying through the now-packed living room, "we celebrate not just another year of our beautiful Bella's life, but her entrance into true adulthood." My mother appeared beside him, dabbing at invisible tears with a silk handkerchief. "We couldn't be prouder of the woman you're becoming, sweetheart." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. What exactly had Bella accomplished to warrant such pride? Spending their money? Changing majors 4 times? Dating the son of Dad's business partner? "And so," my father continued, gesturing grandly toward the large bay window that overlooked our driveway, "we wanted to give you something that represents this new chapter in your life." On cue, the curtains were drawn back to reveal a gleaming white Mercedes-Benz C-Class convertible, wrapped with an absurdly large red bow. The crowd gasped collectively, then erupted into excited chatter and applause. Bella's scream could have shattered glass. She jumped up and down in her designer heels, mascara already streaming down her face as she rushed to the window. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Is that mine?" My father dangled the keys, his face split with a wide grin. "All yours, princess." I stood frozen, my wine glass nearly slipping from my fingers. A Mercedes? They had bought her a Mercedes? Last year for my 25th birthday, they had given me a $50 gift card to a bookstore and a card signed only by my mother. The celebration spilled outside as everyone followed Bella to her new car. She sat in the driver's seat, running her hands over the leather steering wheel, while relatives took turns sitting beside her for photos. My parents stood nearby, accepting congratulations as if they'd accomplished something extraordinary. "They really outdid themselves this time," my aunt whispered to me, as if we were sharing a happy secret. "They certainly did," I replied, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. An hour later, after Bella had insisted on taking her friends for a quick spin around the neighborhood, the crowd returned inside for cake. The candles were lit, the birthday song sung, and then came time for the remaining gifts. Bella tore through designer bags, expensive jewelry, and gift cards with enough money to cover my rent for 3 months. Each gift was met with exaggerated excitement and theatrical gratitude. Then, unexpectedly, my father turned to me. "Emma, we have something for you too." My heart skipped a beat. Had they remembered me after all? Had they perhaps saved something special, recognizing that they'd been neglecting me for years? He handed me a plain white envelope, not even wrapped or decorated with a bow. The contrast between this and the car outside was striking, but I tried to quell my disappointment. Maybe it was a check? Perhaps they'd finally decided to help with my student loans or the debt I'd accumulated helping Grandma with her hospital bills last year. "Open it," my mother urged, an odd smile playing on her lipsticked mouth. The room had grown quiet. Even Bella was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was that smugness? I carefully opened the envelope, expecting perhaps a card, a check, or at worst, another bookstore gift card. Instead, I pulled out a stack of papers. Confusion washed over me as I scanned the first page. It was a credit card statement with my name on it. A credit card I'd never applied for, showing a balance of over $15,000. Behind it was another statement, and another, and another. Bank loans, store credit cards, personal loans, all in my name, all showing substantial balances. The final paper was a summary, a total debt of nearly $83,000. The room spun around me. I looked up at my parents, who were watching me with strange, expectant expressions. What is this?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. My father cleared his throat. "Well, you see, Emma, we've had some financial arrangements that required your assistance." "My assistance?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "These are loans taken out in my name. Credit cards I never applied for. This is identity theft." A nervous titter went through the crowd of guests. My mother's smile tightened. "Don't be so dramatic, Emma," she said, her voice sharp yet quiet. "We needed to make certain investments for the family's future, and your credit score was available." Available. I stared at the papers in my hands, the numbers swimming before my eyes. "You stole my identity to take out loans? What were these even for?" My father gestured vaguely around us, at the house, at the decorations, and with a slight nod toward the window where Bella's new Mercedes sat glistening in the afternoon sun. And then it hit me. They had been using me, my identity, my credit, my future, to fund Bella's lavish lifestyle. "Well," my father said with a shrug that would be etched in my memory forever, "you're the responsible one, right? You can handle it." An uncomfortable silence blanketed the room. The guests shifted awkwardly, some pretending to be fascinated by their cake, others suddenly needing to check their phones. My Aunt Carol, always the peacekeeper, laughed nervously. "Well, isn't this interesting? Should we open more presents?" But I couldn't move past what was happening. The stack of papers trembled in my hands as the full weight of betrayal crashed down on me. "How long?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the now murmuring crowd. "How long have you been doing this?" My mother glanced around the room with a practiced smile, the kind she used at charity galas when something wasn't going according to plan. "Emma, darling, perhaps we should discuss family matters in private." "Family matters?" I felt something snap inside me, like a rubber band stretched beyond its limit. "You call identity theft a family matter?" Bella rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Emma, do you always have to make everything about you? It's my birthday." She twirled her car keys around her manicured finger. I flipped through the statements, seeing purchases dating back 3 years. Designer clothes, vacation packages, tuition payments, a $12,000 charge at a jewelry store dated just 2 months ago, around the time Bella had shown up wearing a diamond tennis bracelet she claimed was just something I treated myself to. "This is why you asked for my social security number to update your will last year, isn't it?" I looked at my father, whose expression remained impassive. "And why you insisted on keeping my mail when I moved to my apartment?" My father cleared his throat, addressing the room more than me. "Everyone, please enjoy the celebration. Emma's just having a moment." Then, lowering his voice, he stepped closer to me. "We'll discuss your financial contribution to this family later. For now, don't ruin your sister's special day." Financial contribution. As if I'd volunteered for this. The room seemed to close in around me. 3 years of struggling to make ends meet, taking on extra shifts, skipping doctor's appointments because I couldn't afford the copay, eating ramen for days on end, all while wondering why my credit score kept mysteriously dropping despite my careful budgeting. "You did this so Bella could live like a princess," I said, the realization settling like ice in my stomach. Everything I've worked for, you've destroyed it. My mother sighed impatiently. Don't be so dramatic. We always knew you could handle it. You're sensible, practical. Boring, Bella interjected with a smirk, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. Responsible, my mother continued, shooting Bella a warning glance. Your sister has certain expectations for her lifestyle. You've always been more grounded. Grounded? I echoed in disbelief. I've been grounded because I've been drowning in debt I didn't even know I had. Cousin Jamie, who'd had one too many glasses of champagne, piped up. Is anyone else finding this really awkward? Or is it just me? My father took my elbow, fingers digging in slightly. Kitchen. Now. He steered me away from the gawking guests, my mother following close behind after instructing Aunt Carol to start the music again. Bella remained in the living room, already distracted by showing off her new car keys to her friends. Once in the kitchen, my father's cordial facade dropped. You couldn't just play along? Do you have any idea how this looks? How this looks? I stared at him incredulously. Dad, you stole my identity. You've taken out loans and credit cards in my name without my consent. That's a felony. My mother leaned against the counter, checking her watch. Emma, families sacrifices for each other. Your grandfather helped put me through college. I helped your aunt through her divorce. That's not the same thing. I struggled to keep my voice down. Those were willing sacrifices. This is theft. My life is ruined before it's even started. It's hardly ruined. My father scoffed, reaching for the scotch bottle. With your budgeting skills, you'll have it paid off in, what? 10, 15 years? The casualness with which they discussed destroying my financial future made me dizzy. I clutched the edge of the counter for support. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why Bella and not me? What makes her so special that you'd commit a crime for her? My parents exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. Your sister has always needed more, my mother said carefully. She's more delicate. You've always been self-sufficient. So, I'm punished for being responsible? For not throwing tantrums when I don't get what I want. My father filled his glass with amber liquid. Nobody's being punished. We made a family decision. Without me, the family member whose life you're destroying. The kitchen door swung open and Bella sauntered in, a frosting-covered fork in her hand. Are you still whining about this? God, Emma, you should be happy for me. Don't be jealous just because I got a car and you got whatever that is. She waved dismissively at the papers still clutched in my hand. $83,000 of debt, I replied flatly. Your shopping sprees, your vacations, your luxury car payments. Bella's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Well, it's not my fault you're the boring, responsible one. Mom and Dad would never put this on me. I'd be a total mess trying to fix it. She laughed, as if the very idea was absurd. Besides, it's not like you have anything better to do with your time or money. She licked frosting from her fork, completely unconcerned with my devastation. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not just broke, shattered. The last thread of loyalty, of family obligation, of turning the other cheek gone. I looked at the three of them, my father sipping a scotch, my mother checking her makeup in her compact mirror, Bella already scrolling through her phone, and saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't my family. They were my predators. And I was done being prey. I spent the remainder of Bella's party in a fog, mechanically smiling when necessary, avoiding eye contact, and strategically positioning myself near exits. Every laugh from my sister, every proud glance from my parents made bile rise in my throat. These people, my blood, had cannibalized my future to feed Bella's insatiable appetite for luxury. By the time the last guest left, cluelessly thanking my parents for such a memorable celebration, I had made my decision. I would not confront them again tonight. I would not storm out dramatically or make threats I couldn't back up. Instead, I would become invisible. I would watch. I would learn. And then I would strike. I'm staying the night, I announced casually, helping my mother clear away cake plates. Too tired to drive back to my apartment, My mother looked surprised but pleased. Of course, darling. Your old room is always there for you. Darling. As if she hadn't just handed me financial ruin wrapped in a plain, white envelope. My father nodded approvingly, likely relieved I wasn't making a scene. Good. We can discuss payment arrangements in the morning. Payment arrangements. Like I was a customer who'd willingly purchase something. Bella yawned dramatically. Well, I'm exhausted from all the excitement. Don't wake me before noon. She flounced upstairs, her new car keys jingling in her hand. I waited until the house was quiet, my parents and sister asleep, before beginning my investigation. My old bedroom had been partially converted into storage, but my childhood desk remained. I sat there now, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. First, I pulled my credit reports, all 3 bureaus. The damage was worse than I'd imagined. 8 credit cards, 3 personal loans, and a co-signature on what appeared to be Bella's previous car loan. My once excellent credit score had plummeted to the low 500s. I dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs. My parents had created email accounts in my name to receive the statements. They'd set up mail forwarding for specific senders. They'd even used a photo of me to create a fake ID, evident from a credit card application I found in my father's poorly encrypted computer files. This wasn't impulsive or desperate. This was calculated, long-term fraud. But the real shock came when I found a folder labeled Family Finances hidden deep in my father's hard drive. Inside were similar schemes involving my late grandparents, my uncle who'd suffered a stroke last year, and even my 18-year-old cousin Jamie. My stomach clenched as I scrolled through the documents. My family wasn't just financially abusing me. They were serial predators who targeted the most vulnerable members of our extended family. A memory surfaced. Grandma confiding in me about mysterious charges, Grandpa struggling to understand why they couldn't qualify for a home equity loan in their final years. We've always been so careful with money, she'd said, confusion clouding her eyes. At the time, I'd attributed it to age-related forgetfulness. Now I knew better. My parents hadn't just stolen from me. They'd stolen from the people who had raised them, cared for them, loved them unconditionally. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't just about my $83,000 anymore. This was about justice. Dawn was breaking when I had finally assembled the full picture. My parents had created a financial house of cards, using identity theft to maintain appearances and fund Bella's extravagant lifestyle. But like all such structures, one wrong move would send it tumbling down. I would be that wrong move. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through my window, I closed my laptop and formulated my plan. Direct confrontation wouldn't work. They'd already shown they had no remorse. Going to the police immediately might expedite justice, but it would also tip my hand. I needed leverage. I needed them vulnerable and unsuspecting. I needed to play along. At breakfast, I appeared subdued but resigned. My father, pleased with my apparent acceptance, outlined his proposed payment plan. Essentially, I would send them $1,500 a month to cover the family debts. I understand now, I said softly, staring into my coffee cup. Family comes first. My mother patted my hand. I knew you'd come around, Emma. You've always been such a practical girl. Bella, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon, rolled her eyes. Drama queen, making such a big deal out of nothing. I forced a smile. You're right, Belle. I overreacted. Congratulations on the car, by the way. It's beautiful. My sister blinked, clearly surprised by my change in attitude, before her face settled into a smug smile. Thanks. Maybe if you're nice, I'll let you drive it sometime. I'd like that. I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. My father raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. See? All's well that ends well. Family united again. If only he knew what I had discovered just hours earlier. If only he could see the determination burning beneath my fabricated submission. Over the next 3 days, I constructed my revenge meticulously. I contacted the best financial crimes attorney in the city, scheduling a consultation for the following week. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus to prevent further damage. I gathered and secured evidence, screenshots, documents, recordings of casual conversations where my parents referenced, using my credit. I also connected with an old friend from college who now worked as a financial investigator. Without revealing names, I outlined the situation. "This isn't just identity theft," she told me gravely. "This is a pattern of elder abuse and financial exploitation. The penalties could include jail time."
Jail time.
The words should have horrified me. Instead, they tasted like justice. By day, I played the dutiful daughter, accepting my fate, even helping Bella shop for accessories for her new car. By night, I was building the case that would destroy them. For days after the birthday party, I returned to my apartment, carrying a flash drive with enough evidence to bury my family. As I unlocked my door, I received a text from my father. "Proud of you for stepping up, Emma. First payment due next week. Family dinner Sunday." "Oh, I'll be there," I whispered to my empty apartment. "But it won't be the dinner you're expecting." The game was on, and I wasn't playing to forgive. I was playing to win. My meeting with Diane Horvath, financial crimes attorney, lasted 3 hours. Her office, minimalist and spotless, felt like a fortress against the chaos my life had become. As I laid out the evidence, credit card statements, loan documents, forged signatures, her expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes grew increasingly cold. "In my 20 years practicing law," she said finally, organizing the papers into precise stacks, "I've seen families destroy each other over money. But this..." She tapped the documents. "This is methodical, calculated." "Can I prove it was them?" I asked, the question I'd been dreading. "The electronic trail is compelling. The forged signatures, the accounts created in your name using your parents' IP address, the emails forwarding your financial statements to them. It's substantial." She leaned forward. "But prosecution could be messy. Family court cases often are." I swallowed hard. I don't just want my name cleared. I want them to face consequences. Diane nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Then we need to be smarter than they are. We need irrefutable proof, preferably a confession." That's when we devised the trap. It was elegant in its simplicity, exploiting the very thing that had made me vulnerable. My parents' assumption that I was too weak, too loyal, or too afraid to fight back. The following Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house for dinner, a leather portfolio tucked under my arm. Bella's new Mercedes gleamed in the driveway beside my father's BMW and my mother's Range Rover, a fleet of luxury vehicles purchased, at least partially, with my stolen identity. "There she is." My father greeted me jovially, scotch already in hand. "The responsible one." I forced a smile, the weight of the hidden voice recorder in my jacket pocket a constant reminder of my purpose.
"Hi, Dad. Mom."
"Where's Bella?" "Still getting ready," my mother replied, perfectly coiffed as always. "You know your sister." I did know my sister. Self-absorbed, entitled, complicit. Dinner proceeded with excruciating normality. My mother discussed her latest charity committee. My father complained about his golf game. Bella, when she finally graced us with her presence, gushed about her new car's features and the compliments she'd received. Not once did anyone mention the debt bomb they'd dropped on me. After dessert, I cleared my throat. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," I began, unzipping my portfolio. My father perked up. "Your first payment isn't due until next week, but early is always appreciated." "Actually," I said, extracting several documents, "I had a better idea. I've been researching ways to consolidate debt, and I discovered something interesting." I slid the first document across the table, a loan application with surprisingly favorable terms. "This would allow me to combine all the debts into one manageable payment," I explained. "But it requires the original debtors to sign off on the consolidation." My father skimmed the document, suspicion gradually replaced by interest as he noted the terms. "This isn't bad. Where did you find this?" "I have a friend in finance," I said vaguely. "She helped me work out the details." My mother examined her copy of the papers. "It seems legitimate. But why do we need to sign anything? The debts are in your name." The trap was baited. Now to spring it. That's exactly why, I replied calmly. Since we all know I didn't actually take out these loans or credit cards, I need signatures from the people who did to authorize the consolidation. A tense silence fell over the table. Bella shifted uncomfortably. It's just a formality, I added quickly, seeing my father's expression darken. The loan officer needs to verify that the consolidation is authorized by all parties with interest in the original debts. And what exactly would we be signing? My father asked, suspicion returning. I produced another document, this one titled Financial Responsibility Acknowledgement. Basically, this states that while the debts remain in my name, you acknowledge your responsibility for creating them and agree to the consolidation terms. My father adjusted his reading glasses, scanning the document. It looked legitimate, official letterhead, legal language, signature lines. It was legitimate, in fact, just not for the purpose I'd claimed. What he was actually reading was a legally binding confession and transfer of assets. I don't see why this is necessary, my mother interjected, always the cautious one. I was prepared for this. The loan officer needs it because of the unusual circumstances. Without this acknowledgement, they can't approve the consolidation, which means I'd have to report the debts as fraudulent to get them removed from my credit. The implied threat hung in the air. You wouldn't do that to family, my father said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. I looked him directly in the eyes. I don't want to. That's why I found this alternative. Another long silence. Bella, bored with the financial discussion, had retreated to her phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media. She didn't realize her precious lifestyle hung in the balance. Finally, my father sighed. Where do we sign? Right here. I indicated the lines at the bottom of the document. All three of you. Why me? Bella looked up, suddenly attentive. I didn't do anything. You're a beneficiary of the funds, I explained patiently. The loan officer needs to account for where the money went. She rolled her eyes but scribbled her signature without reading a word. My parents were more hesitant, but the specter of fraud charges loomed large. One by one, they signed. There, my father said, sliding the document back to me. Problem solved. Now, can we please move past this unpleasantness? I tucked the document carefully into my portfolio, my heart racing. Absolutely. Consider it handled. Little did they know, they had just signed their financial death warrants. I had them exactly where I wanted them. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of careful preparation, of sleepless nights, of meticulous planning. 2 weeks during which my family believed they had pacified me, brought me back into the fold as their personal financial sacrifice. Little did they know, I had set the wheels of justice in motion the moment I'd left their house that Sunday evening. The documents they'd signed weren't just acknowledgments, they were legally binding confessions of identity theft and financial fraud. More importantly, hidden within the dense legal text was a clause transferring their assets to me as compensation for the financial damage they'd caused. They hadn't read the fine print. They never thought they needed to. I chose a Saturday for the confrontation. A day when no one would be rushing off to work or social obligations. A day when we could take all the time needed for the truth to fully sink in. I arrived at their house at precisely 10 a.m., accompanied by Diane Horvath and a representative from the bank. Cousin Jamie was there too. He'd been devastated to learn his own credit had been compromised and had eagerly joined my cause. My father answered the door, confusion clouding his face at the sight of my entourage. Emma? What's going on?
Who are these people?
We need to talk, Dad, I said calmly. All of us. Family meeting. Suspicion flickered across his features, but he stepped aside. In the living room, my mother was arranging flowers, while Bella lounged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Mom, Bella, I announced. We have some business to discuss. My mother glanced up, her practiced smile faltering as she took in Diane's professional attire and the banker's serious expression. I wasn't aware we were having guests today. They're not guests, I replied, setting my briefcase on the coffee table. This is Diane Horvath, my attorney, and Mr. Chin from First National Bank. And you remember Cousin Jamie. Attorney. My father's voice sharpened. What is this about? I unclasped my briefcase and extracted a thick folder. This is about fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. This is about consequences. The color drained from my mother's face. Bella finally looked up from her phone. I don't know what you're talking about, my father blustered, but fear had replaced the confidence in his eyes. I laid out the evidence methodically: credit card statements, loan documents, account applications, all bearing my name but created by them. I played recorded conversations where they casually discussed using my identity and credit. I revealed bank records showing transfers from my grandparents' accounts before their deaths. And finally, I said, extracting the document they'd signed 2 weeks prior, we have your confession and agreement to transfer assets as compensation. My father snatched the paper, scanning it frantically. This isn't what you told us we were signing. You should have read it, I replied coldly. Isn't that what you always taught me? Read everything before you sign it, Emma. One of the few useful lessons you ever gave me. Bella had gone pale. This is ridiculous. You can't do this to us. We're family. Family? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't destroy someone's financial future for luxury cars and designer handbags. Mr. Chin stepped forward. In accordance with the signed agreement, we've already begun the process of freezing your accounts. The vehicles will need to be surrendered by Monday. Vehicles? What vehicles? My mother's voice had risen to a near shriek. All of them, I said. The Mercedes, the BMW, the Range Rover. They're being repossessed as part of the settlement. Bella leapt to her feet. Not my car. You can't take my car. She turned to our parents. Tell her she can't do this. My father had collapsed into an armchair, the document trembling in his hands. This can't be legal. We'll fight it. Diane spoke for the first time, her voice professionally detached. You're welcome to contest it, Mr. Harrington. But I should inform you that Emma has also filed criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. The police have been provided with all relevant evidence. She nodded toward the folder. Fighting the asset transfer would only strengthen the criminal case against you. The truth of their situation finally seemed to dawn on them. My mother sank onto the sofa, her face ashen. My father stared at the documents, as if willing them to disappear. Bella, predictably, went on the offensive. You ungrateful bitch, she screamed, lunging toward me. Jamie stepped between us, his usually jovial face hard with anger. You're done, Bella, he said quietly. They found your name on accounts opened in my name too. You're as guilty as they are. Her face crumpled in shock. She hadn't known I'd discovered her direct involvement. All your bank accounts are frozen, I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Your credit cards have been canceled. The lease on this house will be terminated in 30 days. Where are we supposed to go? My mother whispered. That's not my problem, I replied. Perhaps you can get a small apartment with what's left after the debts are settled. You might even have to, I paused for effect, get jobs. The horror on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so tragic. You always said I was responsible, I continued, gathering my documents. Now I'm taking responsibility for everything, including the consequences you deserve. As we prepared to leave, my father made one last desperate attempt. Emma, please. We can work something out. We're still your parents. I paused at the door, looking back at the people who had raised me only to betray me when it suited them. No, I said finally. You're just people who made some very, very bad decisions. And now you get to live with them. The door closed behind us with a satisfying click. In the driveway, I watched as a tow truck pulled up, ready to take Bella's precious Mercedes away. Karma, as they say, had finally come to collect. 6 months after that fateful confrontation, I sat in a sunlit cafe across town, watching steam rise from my latte. My phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app, another debt paid off. I'd managed to clear nearly 60% of the fraudulent accounts, thanks to the asset liquidation and the favorable judgment from the court. The legal proceedings had been swift and decisive. With assigned confessions and overwhelming evidence, my parents and Bella had little defense. They'd faced not only civil penalties, but criminal charges as well. My father had received a suspended sentence and probation, contingent on financial restitution. My mother had gotten community service. Bella, to her shock and outrage, had been sentenced to 6 months of house arrest and financial counseling. More coffee? The barista's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Please, I nodded, sliding my cup forward. As he refilled it, I caught my reflection in the cafe window, shoulders relaxed, face unburdened. I looked younger than I had in years. The constant stress of unexplained financial struggles lifted from me like a physical weight. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Diane. Just received confirmation. The last of your grandparents' estate has been recovered and will be distributed according to their original will. Your cousin Jamie's portion has been secured as well. Call me when you can. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice for everyone my family had taken advantage of. I sipped my coffee, remembering the last time I'd seen my parents 3 months ago. They'd been moving out of their house, downsized to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood. My father, once proudly discussing his golf game and business connections, had been carrying boxes to a rented moving truck. My mother, her designer clothes replaced by department store basics, had been directing the movers with considerably less authority than she once commanded. They'd spotted me watching from my car and had frozen, a complex mixture of emotions crossing their faces.
Shame. Anger.
Perhaps even a flicker of remorse. I hadn't approached them. There was nothing left to say. Bella had taken it the hardest. Her fairy tale life had crumbled overnight. No more luxury car, no more shopping sprees, no more being the center of attention at lavish parties. The electronic monitor on her ankle had prevented her from even leaving the apartment they now shared. Last I heard, she'd been forced to take an entry-level job at a call center, her first real employment ever. The sweet irony wasn't lost on me. For years, they'd exploited my responsibility while praising Bella's carefree spirit. Now, my responsible nature had saved me, while their recklessness had destroyed them. Emma? I looked up to see Jamie sliding into the seat across from me, his familiar grin a welcome sight. Sorry I'm late. The real estate agent had a million questions. I smiled. How did it go? Great, he beamed. The house is officially on the market. Grandma and Grandpa's place is finally going to someone who'll appreciate it. After recovering the funds my parents had siphoned from my grandparents' estate, we decided to sell their house rather than keep it in the family. Too many painful memories, too much potential for lingering resentment. That's wonderful, Jamie. They would have been happy about that. He nodded, emotion briefly clouding his eyes. I still can't believe Uncle Robert and Aunt Vivian did this to their own parents. I can, I said quietly. That's the difference between us now. The waitress brought Jamie's coffee, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in our thoughts. Have you heard from them? He finally asked. I shook my head. Not directly. Aunt Carol mentioned that Dad's looking for work, but no one will hire him with a fraud conviction. Mom's apparently selling home decor through some online marketplace. And Bella. A small smile touched my lips. Still at the call center. Still furious. Still blaming everyone but herself. Jamie laughed softly. Some things never change. No, I agreed. Some things don't. We moved on to happier topics. Jamie's new promotion, my recent decision to return to graduate school, a trip we were planning with other cousins who'd reconnected in the wake of the family implosion. As we talked, I felt the last shadows of bitterness gradually fading. I would never forgive my parents or Bella for what they'd done, but I was no longer defined by their betrayal. I had taken back my life, my future, my identity, both financial and personal. Later that afternoon, I returned to my apartment, a new one, in a better neighborhood, with large windows and a small balcony where I grew herbs and flowers. The place was modest by my parents' standards, but perfect by mine. It represented everything I had fought for: independence, security, peace. On my coffee table sat a framed photo, not of my immediate family, but of my grandparents, Jamie, and other relatives who had shown me what family should really mean. Beside it lay my latest credit report, the score steadily climbing back toward excellence. As the sun set outside my window, casting a golden glow across my living room, I thought about the twisted gift my parents had given me on Bella's birthday. They had handed me crushing debt, but in fighting my way out from under it, I had discovered my own strength. In their attempt to exploit me, they had inadvertently set me free. That night, I slept soundly, untroubled by financial anxiety for the first time in years. The debt collectors no longer called. The statements in my name were actually mine. My credit cards were used only by me. I had won, not just the battle against my family's fraud, but the war for my own identity. And that, truly, was the sweetest revenge of all.